Good afternoon, baseball fans. Big Al here on this Monday, July 13th, 2026. And welcome to our look at the Major League Baseball standings and playoff races as we are now into the All-Star break. So these are all through games played through July 12th, which was this past Sunday. And I will go team by team, division by division, how they did the previous week and what's next for them this week. Drowsy's in the house. What's up? We'll also look at individual and team leaders at the All-Star break as well. So with that, let's jump right in, and we'll start off with the American League's Eastern Division, beginning with the Tampa Bay Rays, sitting atop the East with a record of 56-38. They are 35-15 at home and 21-23 on the road. They scored 425 runs and allowed 393, which gives them a run differential of plus 32. They lost their last game, and they are 5-5 over their last 10. Aw, that's good, Drowsy. You too. Have an awesome day, my brother. Okay, here's what the Rays did in the week leading up to the All-Star break. They split a 4-game series at home with the New York Yankees, winning 2 and losing 2. And they were outscored in the series 21-14. And then over the weekend, they went 2-1 against the Seattle Mariners, scoring 15 runs and allowing 11. So for the week, Tampa Bay finished at 4-3, scored 29 runs and allowed 32. All right, after the All-Star break, the Rays have a 4-game series at Fenway Park against the Boston Red Sox, which includes 2 games on Friday, plus 1 game on Saturday and 1 game on Sunday. In second place in the AL East, you have the New York Yankees with a record of 54-42. Right now, they are 3 games behind Tampa in the East. 23-20 record at home, 31-22 on the road. They've scored 462 runs and allowed 371. This gives them a run differential of plus 91. They've won 4 straight games, and they are 6-4 over their last 10. Alright, last week the Yankees, again, split 4 at Tampa Bay, winning 2 and losing 2. New York did outscore Tampa 21-14 in the series. And then they went to Washington and swept the 3-game set against the Nationals, scoring 14 runs in that series while only giving up 8. So New York closes the week at 5-2 with 35 runs scored and 22 runs allowed. Following the break, the Yankees will be back at it with a big 3-game series in the Bronx against the LA Dodgers, and that kicks off on Friday. All right. The Boston Red Sox, probably the hottest team in baseball right now, sit in third place with a record of 46-48. They are 10 games behind the Rays in the East. 17-27 at home, 29-21 on the road. 385 runs scored and 358 runs allowed. This gives them a run differential of plus 27. They have won 9 straight games, and they are 9-1 over their last 10. And they wrapped up their road trip in style, winning all 3 against the White Sox in Chicago while outscoring them 15-2. And then they won all 3 in Queens against the New York Mets, outscoring them 13-4. So that's a perfect 6-0 week for Boston. They would score 28 runs and only allowed 6. All right. After the All-Star break concludes, the Red Sox will play 4 with the Tampa Bay Rays at Fenway Park including a doubleheader on Friday. And this series also plays Saturday and Sunday. The Baltimore Orioles are in fourth place. They have a record of 46-51. They are 11.5 games behind Tampa Bay, 28-25 at home, 18-26 on the road. 447 runs scored and 466 runs allowed puts them at a run differential of -19. They've won 4 straight, and they are 7-3 over their last 10 games. Last week, the Orioles dropped 2 of 3 at home to the Chicago Cubs. They were outscored in that series 16-12. But then they swept the Kansas City Royals over the weekend 3-0, outscoring KC 19-6. They finished the week 4-2 with 31 runs scored and 22 runs allowed. After the break, the Orioles are right back at it, playing 3 with the Astros in Houston Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Rounding out the AL East are the Toronto Blue Jays with a record of 45-51. This puts them 12 games behind the Tampa Bay Rays in the East. 24-25 at home, 21-26 on the road. 392 runs scored and 427 runs allowed gives them a run differential of -35. They've lost 2 straight games, and they are 5-5 over their last 10. Alright, so the Blue Jays were on the West Coast last week. They took 2 of 3 from the Giants in San Francisco, outscoring the Giants 20-13. And then they lose 2 of 3 in San Diego to the Padres, where both teams scored 16 runs. This gives Toronto a 3-3 record for the week, with 36 runs scored and 29 runs allowed. Alright, following the All-Star break, the Blue Jays will host the Chicago White Sox for 3 games up at the Rogers Center Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Moving on to the American League Central, we have a virtual tie at the top of the division with the Chicago White Sox and the Cleveland Guardians. The White Sox are 50-45, 31-17 at home, 19-28 on the road. 454 runs scored and 419 runs allowed puts them at a run differential of +35. They've won 3 straight games, and they are 5-5 in their last 10. Alright, so last week, the White Sox started the week off poorly, getting swept at home by the Boston Red Sox and being outscored 15-2. Then they played the A's and swept all 3 games from them, and outscoring the A's 24-2. So the White Sox closed the week 3-3. with 26 runs scored and 17 runs allowed. Alright, after the All-Star break, the White Sox are headed north of the border for 3 with the Blue Jays Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Also tied for first are the Cleveland Guardians with a record of 51-46. They are 24-22 at home and 27-24 on the road. They've scored 385 runs and allowed 387, which gives them a run differential of -2. They've won 4 straight, and they are 6-4 over their last 10. Alright, the Guardians did lose the series at home to the Minnesota Twins, 2-1. Both teams scored 11 runs in that series. Then the Guardians went down to Miami and swept the Marlins 3-0, outscoring them 12-5. And the Marlins have been one of the best teams in baseball since the start of June, if not the best team in baseball since the start of June. So for the week, the Guardians closed at 4-2 with 23 runs scored and 16 runs allowed. Following the break, the Guardians will host the Pittsburgh Pirates for 3 games at Progressive Field Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Minnesota Twins are in third place with a record of 48 and 49. This puts them 3 back of both the Sox and the Guardians. Minnesota is 26 and 25 at home, 22 and 24 on the road, with 471 runs scored and 485 runs allowed. This gives them a run differential of minus 14. They've won 2 straight games, and they are 7-3 over their last 10. Alright, the Twins won both of their series at home this past week, beating the Cleveland Guardians 2-1, while both teams scored 11 runs. And then beating the LA Angels 2-1, outscoring the Halos 12-9. The Twins closed the week 4-2 with 23 runs scored and 20 runs allowed. Alright, after the All-Star break, the Twins are back in action. They have 3 with the Cubs at Wrigley Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. In fourth place, you have the Detroit Tigers at 44 and 52, 6.5 games behind both Chicago and Cleveland. 27 and 23 at home, 17 and 29 on the road. 407 runs scored and 383 runs allowed gives Detroit a run differential of plus 24. They've lost 2 straight games, but they are 7-3 over their last 10. The Tigers spent the entire week at Comerica Park, starting the week with a 3-game sweep of the A's, where they outscored them 16-4, and then losing the series to the Philadelphia Phillies 2-1, and outscoring the Phils 12-11. So Detroit closes the week 4-2. They scored 28 runs while allowing 15. Alright, following the break, the Tigers are headed west. They're off to Anaheim for a 3-game set with the Angels, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Sitting in last place in the Central are the Kansas City Royals with a record of 38 and 59, 13 games behind the White Sox and Guardians. 21 and 26 at home, 17 and 33 on the road, 411 runs scored and 499 runs allowed gives them a run differential of minus 88. KC has lost 5 straight and they are 3-7 over their last 10 games. Alright, the Royals began the week wrapping up their series with the Phillies at Kauffman Stadium. They won that finale 15-1. Then they went to New York, dropped 2 of 3 to the Mets, where they were outscored 25-21. And then they got swept at Camden Yards by the Orioles, 3-0, being outscored 19-6. So a rough week for the Royals as they finished 2-5. They scored 42 runs, but gave up 45. Alright, following the break, the Royals will host the San Diego Padres for 3 games, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That brings us down to the American League West. And we have a new leader at the top of the division, and that's the Texas Rangers, with a record of 49 and 47, 24 and 22 at home, 25 and 25 on the road. They've scored 399 runs and allowed 414. That gives them a run differential of minus 15. They won their last game and they are 5-5 over their last 10. And it was a pretty good week for the Rangers as they went 2-1 against the Astros despite being outscored 22-16, and 2-1 against the, or should I say 2-1 against the Angels, I should say, where they were outscored 22-16 in that series. And then they went 2-1 against the Houston Astros, and they were outscored in that series as well, 17-16. So despite being outscored 39-32 last week, the Texas Rangers did post a 4-2 record against division rivals. After the All-Star break ends, the Rangers have a real tough series in Atlanta. 3 games with the Braves, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. In second place are the Seattle Mariners at 48-49, presently a game and a half behind Texas, 27-20 at home, 21-29 on the road, 392 runs scored and 376 runs allowed gives them a run differential of plus 16. In fact, they are the only team in the AL West with a positive run differential. The Mariners won their last game and they are only 4-6 over their last 10. And this was a rough week for the Mariners as they went down to Florida. They were swept in Miami 3-0 by the Marlins. And then they went to St. Petersburg where they lost 2 out of 3 to the Tampa Bay Rays. So for the week, the Mariners went 1-5, scoring 20 runs and giving up 31. So yeah, again, a rough week in Florida for the Seattle Mariners. Alright, they're in the All-Star break right now, but when they come out of it, they'll host the San Francisco Giants for 3 games, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The hard-charging Houston Astros are in third place. They have a record of 47-51. They are 3 games behind Texas in the West. 23-24 record at home, 24-27 on the road. 449 runs scored and 496 runs allowed gives them a run differential of minus 47. They lost their last game and they are 4-6 in their last 10. And this was kind of a tough week for the Astros as they lost both their series on the road, beginning with the Washington Nationals, where they lost that series 2-1, and they were outscored 23-19. And then they went to Arlington and lost 2 out of 3 to the Rangers. And despite that, they outscored Texas by 1 run, 17-16. So for the week, the Astros finished 2-4 with 36 runs scored and 39 runs allowed. Alright, when they return from the All-Star break, they'll host the Baltimore Orioles for 3 games, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Athletics are in 4th place, and man, the bottom has dropped out on this team. They are now 41-55, 8 games out of the West behind the Rangers. 19-28 at home, 22-27 on the road. They've scored 422 runs and allowed 528. This gives them a run differential of minus 106. And man, they are ice cold. They've lost 9 games in a row, and they are 1-9 in their last 10. And this was a rough week for the A's. The week started in Detroit where they were swept by the Tigers. They were outscored in that set 16-4. And then it got progressively worse as they went into Chicago and got swept by the White Sox 3-0, being outscored 24-2. So that's a 0-6 record for the A's, where they would score just 6 runs while allowing 40. So their opponents scored nearly 7 times the runs as the Athletics did this past week. That pretty much tells you all you need to know. Alright, following the break, the A's will host the Washington Nationals for 3 games, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And sitting in last place in the AL West are the Los Angeles Angels. At 38 and 59, they are tied with Kansas City for the worst record in baseball. The Angels are presently 11.5 games behind the Rangers in the West, 21 and 25 at home, 17 and 34 on the road. 430 runs scored and 485 runs allowed gives them a run differential of minus 55. They've lost 2 straight games, and they are 2-8 over their last 10 games. And this was another so-so week for the Halos, losing 2 of 3 in Arlington against the Rangers. They lose the series despite outscoring Texas 22-16 in that set. And then they went to Minnesota and lost 2 of 3 to the Twins, where they were outscored 12-9. So the Angels finished 2-4 for the week with 31 runs scored and 28 runs allowed. The Angels will return from the All-Star break at home against the Detroit Tigers Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Alright, so that's a look at the American League. Now let's jump into the National League at the All-Star break. And sitting in first in the NL East is still the Atlanta Braves. But man, they are holding on by a thread. The Braves have a record of 55 and 40. They're 27 and 18 at home, 29 and 22 on the road. 460 runs scored and 368 runs allowed. That gives them a run differential of plus 92. They won their last game and they are 5-5 over their last 10. Alright, so the Braves played a 4-game wraparound series with the New York Mets. The series finale was last Monday, which the Braves lost 7-6. Then they went to Pittsburgh and took 2 of 3 from the Pirates, with both teams scoring 17 runs. And then they would lose the series at Busch to the St. Louis Cardinals 2-1, and they were outscored 9-6. So for the week, the Braves went 3-4 with 29 runs scored and 33 runs allowed. Alright, they'll return from the All-Star break with a 3-game series at home with the Texas Rangers beginning on Friday night. What's up, Vaughn? How's it going, man? Alright, second place are the Philadelphia Phillies with a record of 54 and 43. They are 2 games behind Atlanta in the East. And man, they have made up tons of ground after that slow start to the year. They are 25 and 21 at home, 29 and 22 on the road. 424 runs scored and 434 runs allowed gives them a run differential of minus 10. They've won 2 straight games, and they are 5-5 over their last 10. Okay, the week did not start out great for the Phillies as they were walloped by the Kansas City Royals in the finale of that series last Monday, losing 15-1. But things gradually got better. They went 2-1 against the Reds at Great American Ballpark. And they were outscored in that series 12-10. Stopping in for a few. I have to get going soon. Good to see you, my friend. Oh, definitely, Vaughn. Thanks for dropping in. And then after that, they went to Detroit and won 2 of 3 from the Tigers. And they were outscored in that series as well, 12-11. So the Phillies ended up 4-3 for the week. 22 runs scored and 39 runs allowed. Alright, so they are hosting the All-Star game at Citizens Bank Park. The home run derby is tonight, and then the actual game is tomorrow night. After that, the Phillies will begin a 3-game series with the New York Mets at Citizens Bank Park, which begins Thursday. They will have a day off end the series on Friday, and then it will resume Saturday and wrap up on Sunday. Speaking of hard-charging teams, in third place you have the Miami Marlins at 52-45. Right now, 4 games behind the Braves in the East. 31-20 at home, real good home record. 21-25 on the road. They've scored 439 runs and allowed 415, which gives them a run differential of plus 24. Now, they did lose 3 straight. We'll talk about that in a second. And they are 6-4 over their last 10. Stardust is in the house. Crazy Cajun's in the house. What's up, y'all? Alright, so the week started out very well for the Marlins as they swept the Seattle Mariners at Lone Depot Park, outscoring Seattle 16-9. But then they would get swept at home by the Cleveland Guardians, losing all 3 games and being outscored 12-5. So, a 3-3 week for the Marlins, where they scored 21 runs and gave up 21 runs. And when they return from the All-Star break, they have a real big series with the Milwaukee Brewers up at Great American Field. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's a 3-game set. In fourth place in the East are the Washington Nationals at 48-49. 8 games behind Atlanta. 20-31 at home, 28-18 on the road. 516 runs scored, which is tied for the most runs scored in baseball. And 509 runs allowed gives them a run differential of plus 7. They've lost 3 in a row, and they are 4-6 in their last 10. Alright, the week started out good for Washington as they took 2 of 3 at home from the Houston Astros, outscoring them 23-19. But then they got swept over the weekend by the New York Yankees, being outscored in that series 14-8. So for the week, Washington finishes 2-4, 31 runs scored, and 33 runs allowed. Following the All-Star break, the Nationals are headed west. They have a 3-game series with the A's in Sacramento beginning on Friday night. Rounding out the National League East, the New York Mets, with a record of 40-57. They are 16 games behind the Braves in the East. 21-28 at home, 19-29 on the road. 398 runs scored and 463 runs allowed gives them a run differential of minus 65. They've lost 3 in a row. You see the trend there. And they are 4-6 in their last 10. Alright. The week started out pretty good for the Mets as they won the series finale with the Braves in Atlanta, winning that game 7-6 last Monday. Then they returned home to Citi Field and beat the Kansas City Royals 2-1, outscoring them 25-21, before being swept at home by the Boston Red Sox 3-0, and being outscored 13-4. So for the Mets, that's a record of 3-4. With 36 runs scored and 40 runs allowed. After the All-Star break, the Mets are in Philly for 3 with their division rivals beginning on Thursday night. Then you have a day off on Friday. And then the series resumes Saturday and wraps up on Sunday. Moving on to the National League Central, we have the Milwaukee Brewers leading the way with a record of 59-37. 29-18 at home, 30-19 on the road. 489 runs scored and 363 runs allowed gives them a run differential of plus 126. That is second in baseball at the All-Star break. They're kind of sliding a little. They did lose 3 in a row. More on that shortly. They are 5-5 over their last 10 games. Okay, now the Brewers played a rare 5-game set against the Cardinals in St. Louis. They won 4 of those 5 games, scoring 27 runs and allowing 17. But then they went to PNC Park and got swept by the Pittsburgh Pirates 3-0. They were outscored in that series 24-13. So in a rare 8-game week, the Brewers broke even at 4-4, scoring 40 runs and allowing 41. After the All-Star break, the Brewers will welcome the Miami Marlins into American Family Field for 3 games, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Now, this is the same Marlins team that has the best record in baseball since June 1st. Although, as I mentioned, they were swept over the weekend. In second place, you have the Chicago Cubs with a record of 54-42, 5 games behind the Brew Crew. 27-19 at home, 27-23 on the road. 484 runs scored and 432 runs allowed gives them a run differential of plus 52. They've won 2 straight games, and they are 6-4 over their last 10. And it was a good week for the Cubs, as they went into Camden Yards and won 2 of 3 from the Orioles, outscoring Baltimore 16-12. Then it was on the Great American Ballpark, where the Cubs had recent struggles, but not this weekend. They took 2 of 3 from the Reds, outscoring Cincinnati 13-11. And finishing the week 4-2 with 29 runs scored and 23 runs allowed. Alright, following the break, the Cubs return with a 3-game series at home with the Minnesota Twins, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. In third place, you have the St. Louis Cardinals at 50-45. They are 8.5 games behind Milwaukee. 26-26 at home, 24-19 on the road. 429 runs scored and 423 runs allowed gives them a run differential of plus 6. They lost their last game, and they are 4-6 in their last 10, so they're kind of struggling a little bit. And that was pretty indicative with the start of the week, as they played 5 games with the Brewers and went just 1-4 in those 5 games. They scored 17 runs and gave up 27. But then they welcomed the Atlanta Braves into town, and St. Louis won that series 2-1. And that was a low-scoring set. Only 15 total runs in that game, 9 by the Cardinals, 6 by the Braves. So they would finish 3-5 in a rare 8-game week, where they scored 26 runs and allowed 33. The Cardinals returned for the All-Star break on Friday with 3 down here in Phoenix against the Arizona Diamondbacks, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And there is going to be a makeup game between these 2 teams in St. Louis in a couple weeks as well. In fourth place, you have the Pittsburgh Pirates at 50-47, 9.5 games behind the Brewers. 27-24 at home, 23-23 on the road. They've scored 516 runs. All right, Vaughn, see you later. Thanks for dropping in. The 516 runs ties the Washington Nationals for the most runs scored by any team in baseball. They would also allow 472, which gives Pittsburgh a run differential of plus 44. They've won 3 straight games, and they are 7-3 over their last 10. Alright, slow start to the week for the Pirates, losing 2 of 3 at home to the Atlanta Braves, both teams scoring 17 runs in that set. And how about this? Over the weekend, Pittsburgh would sweep the first place Brewers 3-0, outscoring them 24-13. So the Pirates closed the week 4-2 with 41 runs scored and 30 runs allowed. After the All-Star break, the Pirates are off to Cleveland for a 3-game set with the AL Central co-leading Cleveland Guardians, and that starts on Friday. Rounding out the Central, you have the Cincinnati Reds with a record of 43-52, 15.5 games behind Milwaukee in the Central. 22-28 at home, 21-24 on the road. 395 runs scored and 455 runs allowed gives them a run differential of -60. They've lost 2 straight games and they are 4-6 over their last 10. Alright. After the All-Star break, the Reds are headed to Denver for 3 games with the Colorado Rockies, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That brings us now to the National League West, where the Los Angeles Dodgers, aka the 2-time reigning World Series champions, are owners of the best record in baseball at the All-Star break at 61-36. 31-19 at home, 30-17 on the road. 506 runs scored and 357 runs allowed gives LA a major league leading run differential of +149. They've lost 3 straight games and they are 5-5 over their last 10. Alright, they started the week going 2-1 against the lowly Colorado Rockies. They outscored them 15-14. But then the not the Cardinals, I'm thinking football already. Anyway, the Arizona Diamondbacks came into Chavez Ravine and swept the Dodgers 3-0, outscoring LA 23-8. So for the week, the NL West leaders went 2-4, scoring 23 runs and allowing 37. Alright, following the All-Star break, they got a big series in the Bronx this weekend. 3 against the New York Yankees, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's going to be some must-see TV right there. Alright, the Arizona Diamondbacks, we mentioned them. They're in second place with a record of 49-47. They are 11.5 games out behind the Dodgers, but that sweep in Los Angeles really helps. 27-20 at home, 22-27 on the road. 416 runs scored and 429 runs allowed gives them a run differential of -13. They've won 4 straight games and they are 6-4 over their last 10. Alright, and they spent the entire week in Southern California playing their division rivals. They went 2-2 against the Padres at Petco Park, outscoring San Diego 16-15. And then we mentioned that 3-game sweep in LA against the Dodgers, where the Diamondbacks outscored them 23-8. And how about this? The Arizona Diamondbacks finished with the best record in the National League this week at 5-2, scoring 39 runs and allowing 23. After the All-Star break, the D-backs return with a 3-game home set against the St. Louis Cardinals down the street at Chase Field, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The San Diego Padres have fallen to 3rd place in the West at 48-48. They are 12.5 games behind the Dodgers. 27-24 at home, 21-24 on the road. 379 runs scored, which is the fewest in baseball, and 422 runs allowed gives them a run differential of -43. They've won 2 straight games and they are 5-5 over their last 10. Alright, so they split the 4-game home set with the Arizona Diamondbacks, winning 2 and losing 2. The Padres would score 15 runs while the D-backs scored 16. But then they won the series against the Toronto Blue Jays, which was also at Petco Park. That was a 2-1 series for San Diego, both teams scoring 16 runs. So the Padres finished 4-3 for the week. 31 runs scored and 32 runs allowed. The Padres return from the All-Star break on Friday as they kick off a 3-game series in Kansas City with the last place Royals. In fourth place, you have the San Francisco Giants at 41-55, 19 and a half games behind the Dodgers. 22-25 at home, 19-30 on the road. 393 runs scored and 459 runs allowed gives San Francisco a run differential of -64. Thank you, Stardust. I appreciate you. The Giants have won 2 straight, and they are 5-5 over their last 10. Alright, so it was kind of an up and down week for the Giants. They started off losing 2 of 3 at home to the Toronto Blue Jays, being outscored in that series 20-13. But then took 3 out of 4 at home with the Colorado Rockies, outscoring Colorado 18-9. And basically, San Francisco owns Colorado, especially at Oracle Park. Alright, so the Giants closed the week 4-3. 31 runs scored, 29 runs allowed. And they'll return from the All-Star break on Friday night, beginning a 3-game series with the Mariners and in Seattle. And yeah, they are struggling as well. Rounding out the National League West, you have the Colorado Rockies with a record of 39-59. 22 and a half games behind the Dodgers in the West. 22-25 record at home, 17-34 on the road. 466 runs scored, 555 runs allowed. Ouch. Gives them a run differential of -89. Ouch again. They've lost 2 straight games, and they are 4-6 over their last 10 games. Alright, so they lost 2 out of 3 to the LA Dodgers. They were outscored by a single run in that series. And then they lose 3 of 4 in San Francisco, where they were outscored by 9 runs. So the Rockies closed the week 2-5, and that's the worst record in the National League for this past week, scoring 23 runs and allowing 33. Following the All-Star break, the Rockies will welcome the Cincinnati Reds to Coors Field for a 3-game series beginning on Friday. Alright, so looking at the playoff picture right now, on the American League side, Tampa would be the number 1 seed. Chicago, based on tiebreakers, would be the 2 seed at the present time. And then Texas, as the Western Division leaders, would be the number 3 seed. As far as the wild card goes here at the All-Star break, the Yankees would hold the number 1 wild card spot at 54-42. Cleveland would be the number 2 wild card at 51-46. And then there's a tie for the 3rd and final wild card spot in the American League between both Seattle and Minnesota, both at 48-49. On the outside, you have Boston at 46-48. They would be a half game out. Houston is a game and a half out at 47-51. Then it's Baltimore at 46-51. They would be 2 games out of a wild card spot. Toronto at 45-51 would be 2.5 games out. Detroit at 44-52 is 3.5 games out. The A's are are 6.5 out at 41 and 55. Meanwhile, the Kansas City Royals and LA Angels are at the bottom of the wild card standings, both 10 games out, both with the worst record in baseball at 38 and 59. On the National League side of things, the Dodgers would be your top seed on the senior circuit. The Brewers, as Central Division leaders, would be the number 2 seed. And the Atlanta Braves, leaders in the East, would be the number 3 seed. As far as the wild card picture in the NL goes, the Cubs are the number 1 wild card with a record of 54 and 42. Then you have the Philadelphia Phillies as the number 2 wild card presently at 54 and 43. And as of right now, the Miami Marlins, if the season ended right now, they would be in the playoffs. They have a record of 52 and 45 and currently hold down the number 3 wild card spot in the National League. On the outside, St. Louis is 1 game out at 50 and 45, followed by Pittsburgh 2 games out at 50 and 47. Arizona is 2.5 games out at 49 and 47. Then it's San Diego, 3.5 games out at 48 and 48. Washington is 4 games out at 48 and 49. Then you have Cincinnati at 43 and 52. They are 8 games behind Miami for that last wild card spot. San Francisco is 10.5 games out at 41 and 55. Then you have the New York Mets 12 games out at 40 and 57. And the Colorado Rockies sitting at 39 and 59 and 13.5 games out. Alright, we're going to wrap this up with a look at the player and team leaders at the All-Star break. Okay, we'll start with batting average. Alright, so your leader in batting at the All-Star break is Otto Lopez of the Miami Marlins with a .334 average. In second place is Luis Ariz of the San Francisco Giants. He has a .330 average. Yandy Diaz of the Tampa Bay Rays is number 3 with a .322 batting average. Then it's Yordan Alvarez of the Houston Astros with a .318 batting average. And rounding out the top 5, you have Nick Gonzalez of the Pittsburgh Pirates batting .308. As far as home runs, Kyle Schwarber of the Philadelphia Phillies leads the majors at the break with 32 home runs, followed by Yordan Alvarez of the Astros with 31. Ben Rice of the New York Yankees has 29. Meanwhile, Junior Caminero of the Rays and James Wood of the Nationals are tied for 4th, both with 28 homers. As far as runs batted in, your major league leader is Jordan Walker of the St. Louis Cardinals with 74, followed by Yordan Alvarez of the Houston Astros with 70, Luis Garcia Jr. of the Washington Nationals, and Ben Rice of the New York Yankees are tied for 3rd in RBIs, both with 68. Rounding out the top 5 is C.J. Abrams of the Washington Nationals with 67 RBIs. Okay, here are your hits leaders at the All-Star break. Otto Lopez of the Marlins is number 1 with 127 hits, followed by Luis Ariz of the Giants with 119. Both Yandy Diaz and Yordan Alvarez of the Rays and Astros respectively are tied for 3rd with 111. And rounding out the top 5 is Xavier Edwards of the Marlins with 107 hits. As for your leaders in stolen bases, that would be Nasim Nunez of the Washington Nationals. He has 34 stolen bases. In second place is Bobby Witt Jr. of the Kansas City Royals with 30. Jazz Chisholm Jr. of the New York Yankees is third with 26. And tied for fourth, you have Jose Ramirez of the Cleveland Guardians and Pete Crow Armstrong of the Chicago Cubs, both with 24 stolen bases. All right, moving on to pitching. Aaron Ashby of the Milwaukee Brewers has the most wins of any pitcher in baseball with 12. You have a tie for second between Christopher Sanchez of the Philadelphia Phillies, Chase Burns of the Cincinnati Reds, and Sonny Gray of the Boston Red Sox, all with 11 wins. And then you have Sandy Alcantara of the Miami Marlins rounding out the top 5 with 10 wins. Okay, here are your leaders in earned run average. Jacob Mizorowski of the Milwaukee Brewers has a 1.62 ERA at the All-Star break. That's the lowest in baseball. Followed by Cam Schlittler of the New York Yankees with a 2.05. Then it's Chris Sale of the Atlanta Braves at 2.20. Eduardo Rodriguez of the Arizona Diamondbacks at 2.29. And rounding out the top 5 is Sonny Gray from the Boston Red Sox at 2.54. All right, saves leaders. You have Cade Smith of the Cleveland Guardians with 28. Brian Baker of the Tampa Bay Rays and Mason Miller of the San Diego Padres both with 25. And then you have Riley O'Brien of the St. Louis Cardinals and Johan Duran of the Philadelphia Phillies, each with 24 saves. All right. Your strikeout leaders are Jacob Mizorowski of the Brewers with 167. Dylan Cease from the Blue Jays with 148. Christopher Sanchez from the Phillies with 144. Cam Schlittler of the Yankees with 137. And Jesus Luzardo of the Phillies with 136. And quality starts. All right, this is where a starting pitcher goes at least 6 innings while allowing 3 runs or fewer, or rather 3 earned runs or fewer. Sandy Alcantara of the Marlins and Christopher Sanchez of the Phillies are tied for the major league lead in quality starts with 14. Then it's Yoshinobu Yamamoto of the LA Dodgers with 13. And tied for 4th are Sonny Gray of the Boston Red Sox and Michael Wacha of the Kansas City Royals, both with 12 quality starts. Okay. All right, moving on to team leaders at the All-Star break. All right. We'll start with team batting average. The Pittsburgh Pirates are number 1 at 263, followed by the LA Dodgers at 262. In third, you have the Tampa Bay Rays at 259, which also leads the American League. The San Francisco Giants are number 4, batting 256 as a team. And the Colorado Rockies round out the top 5 at 255. All right. As far as home runs, the Yankees lead baseball with 142 long balls. The Washington Nationals are second with 138, followed by the Houston Astros with 133, the Chicago White Sox with 129, and the LA Dodgers with 127 rounds out the top 5. As for runs batted in, the Pirates lead the majors at 495, followed close behind by the Washington Nationals with 490. The Dodgers are third with 476 RBIs. Then it's the Brewers with 463 and the Cubs with 452. Okay, hits by team. The Pirates lead baseball with 886 hits. The Dodgers are second with 854. Then it's the Rockies with 847. The Giants are fourth with 840. And the Brewers are fifth with 832. And stolen bases. The Washington Nationals have the most stolen bases of any team in baseball at the All-Star break with 103. Tied for second are the Padres and Marlins, both with 101. The Yankees are fourth with 96, and the Guardians round out the top 5 at 93. Now your team pitching leaders. Alright, as far as wins, the Dodgers have 61. The Brewers sit at 59. The Rays have 56. The Braves with 55 and the Yankees with 54. Alright, team earned run average. That's led by the Yankees at 3.37. Second is the Brewers at 3.48. In third, you have the LA Dodgers at 3.55. The Boston Red Sox are fourth with a 3.59 team ERA. And the Braves round out the top 5 with a 3.60. Alright, saves. That's led by the Tampa Bay Rays with 37. In second are the Cleveland Guardians with 32. Third place is the Milwaukee Brewers with 30. And tied for fourth, you have the Toronto Blue Jays and the Philadelphia Phillies, both with 29. As far as strikeouts, the Phillies lead baseball with 949 strikeouts. The Brewers are second with 928, followed by the Mets with 885, the Pirates with 883, and the Guardians rounding out the top 5 with 870. And quality starts as we wrap this up. Again, this is where a starting pitcher goes at least 6 innings while allowing 3 earned runs or fewer. The Dodgers lead the majors in quality starts at the All-Star break with 53. The next closest team is the Seattle Mariners with 44. The Boston Red Sox and Philadelphia Phillies both sit at 42. And the Kansas City Royals round out the top 5 with 39 quality starts. Alright, there you have it, folks. Those are your Major League Baseball standings, playoff races, plus player and team leaders at the All-Star break. Now, I'll probably be back on the 27th with another check of the Major League standings, as we'll be into the official second half of the baseball season. And again, we got more football. We got a lot of football content coming down the pipe, including my 2026 season predictions for the NFL. We'll also have the Associated Press and AFCA preseason college football polls coming out next month. Once the AP is released, I'll give you both of those. And another thing I didn't mention in my last video that I do during football season is I also look at the college football television schedule every week and give you the announcers of every game, where they're playing, what time they're playing, and what channel they're on. So that's another one of my favorite videos to do. Those will be released on Tuesdays during the season. So I forgot to mention that. I wanted to get that out as well. So, with that, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. Thank you so much, Stardust, for dropping by. Also, a big shout out to Vaughn257, Crazy Cajun J1703, my boy. Scrolling up. And then God is my King, aka Drowsy. Big shout out to you as well, my brother. Alright, thanks for joining me. Big Al signing off. Peace out.